2 or 3 years, kind of the same stuff growing in. And they've just gotten out of control. They're big, they're monstrous, they don't look attractive anymore. One of them has lemon balm in it. I mean, it's a huge pot. It's like this big. And originally, I think I had 6 different herbs in there. Now I have lemon balm. It's all that is in that pot, is lemon balm. So I looked at it and went, oh, well, I really need to change things out. They need to be remodeled, essentially. They need to be remodeled. Now is a great time to do it. We're changing seasons. Obviously, temperatures are dropping, days are shorter. It's time to change out those containers and be ready for the fall and winter seasons. And our containers can look just as attractive through the fall and winter as they do through spring and summer. We can still have pretty things out front. Just because it's getting cold doesn't mean we need to close the doors, lock the windows, and never look outside again. I mean, Arizona is beautiful in that we can have gorgeous days in November. I mean, you could be out there in shorts in November, Thanksgiving Day, and enjoying the day. There's times in December and January where you can be outside. So why not have your house, your patios look attractive? We have 4 seasons here. We have great outdoor rooms here. Let's put them to use. So when we think containers, you just have to change your mindset a little bit from spring to summer to fall and winter. And of course, we have to change our plant palette because a lot of those wonderful things, geraniums, petunias, all those things that do so terrific, within a few short weeks are going to be done. And what I find a lot of times is people go, oh, but the petunias look so pretty right now. I don't want to change it out. And I get that. I mean, they look fabulous. But if you don't change it out now, if you wait too long to change them out, those pansies and things that you put in now are not going to have enough time to root out. So they're not going to be as strong. They're going to have more of a struggle getting through those cold periods that we know we're going to have. So even though it's very painful to pull some of those things out, if you want to continue your container gardening, you need to do that. So it's okay. I give you permission. Go home and rip out that geranium, rip out that petunia. Maybe you have a little inexpensive plastic pot. Let's see if I had one. So if you have that gorgeous geranium that you just don't want to give up yet, pull it out of your pot, stick it in something inexpensive, and enjoy it for a few more weeks. And then when it freezes, it's out of here, it's gone. But at least your big, pretty containers are going to start rooting out and growing on and be able to survive the rest of the season. So it's okay to rip things out. I'm going to have to do it this afternoon. It's my goal this afternoon is to go home and plant. And there's some things that are going to look fabulous. It's going to kill me to rip it out, but I'm going to do it because I know, I'll think ahead a little bit. So container gardening. Containers can be anything. A lot of people get caught up in what should my container look like, what texture, what material. You can use just about anything for a container. The main thing you need to think about in your container is drainage. Now, I love this pot. It's absolutely gorgeous. These are new ones that we just got in. But what's the problem with it? There's no holes in this container. So if I go to plant in here, what's going to happen? It's going to drown. So I got 2 options, essentially. I can drill holes in the bottom of it, which is probably what I would do just because I like easy. So I would probably drill holes in it. The other option I could do is, there again, cheap plastic pot. I'll plant this up and I'll just stick it in here. So I'll put something at the bottom to keep it propped up, but I'll just stick my inexpensive pot in here, and that way it's easy to pull out and change if I want to. If I wanted to keep this maybe a few years down the road, I want to use it for a trash can. You could do that. So you got 2 options, 2 ways to do it, but drainage is hugely, hugely important. A lot of people don't think about that. All your plants, no matter very, very few plants, want to be constantly wet. Most of your plants, they want a nice watering, they want good drainage, they want to dry out in between waterings. That's what keeps the root system healthy. If it's overly wet, you're going to have a bathtub, essentially, and plants are not going to be happy in that. So drainage, make sure you have good drainage. If it's on a patio where you don't want the water flowing through onto your flagstone or whatever, put a saucer under it, that's good. Keep an eye on that saucer. If it's always wet too, the roots are going to wick that water back up. So you got to make sure your saucer's not always sitting there with water in it. So if it is, maybe you're overwatering and you need to cut back on your watering a little bit. The other thing that I see people do all the time, and I'm not sure where this all started. I would like to find out the origin of this at some point in their life. Everybody goes, oh, drainage, I'm going to throw rocks in the bottom of it. Don't do that. Number one, it makes things really heavy. You ever try to move a container with rocks? It's really heavy. Second thing, those rocks settle. When the rocks settle, what do they tend to do? They start covering your drainage holes. And you've defeated your purpose. It's no longer draining. Those rocks also hold on to moisture. There's a molecular thing that happens, and the rocks actually maintain the moisture in there. So don't put rocks. Just don't do it. Good potting soil is what you want. You want a potting soil that holds water, but also drains. Kind of that oxymoron of potting soil. So some of the potting soils, and I'll say it, Miracle Grow, has come out with a potting soil that has like a moisture retention in it. That's just horrible. It really keeps things too wet. And what happens when you have wet potting soil all the time, you can start getting mold and fungus on the top of your soil. It's just gross. It's inexpensive, I get it, but it's not a good potting soil. As with so many things, the foundation is essential. So having a good foundational potting soil is essential. It's good to spend some money on your potting soil because that's going to make a difference for your plants. If you put cheap potting soil in a container, no matter how expensive the plant you buy, it's not going to be happy. So go with a good potting soil. We have our own blend. I really love it. But there's other ones out there. There's Fox Farm, Ocean Forest, really nice potting soils that have the sphagnum moss in them, and they've got the perlite in them, and they're going to allow the water to move through, but they're going to also help kind of retain that moisture around the plants too. I was going somewhere and I forgot what it was. Oh, well, I'll come back to me. I was up really late last night. I'm an early to bed, early to rise person, and I was up to like 11 last night. So if I start like talking backwards and something, just forgive me. So potting soil, very, very important. Drainage, very, very important. The other thing you want to think about is things you're going to add to your potting soil. So this time of year, we aren't drying out as quick. Obviously, it's cooler days. We really don't need to worry about it being 100 degrees, so that soil's not going to dry out as quickly. If it was summertime, I would definitely be telling you put some Aqua Boost crystals in there, because what they are is little crystals that expand up. They hold the moisture, but they slowly release it. So in those days when it's 100 degrees and you could stand out there with a hose and still not get enough water, it helps you get through. So that type of product is very, very important in the summertime. Not as important right now, but still important. Oh, I remember I was going to tell you. So we're talking about potting soil. So we had this really nice couple brought in a dozen pots. They're like this size or smaller, and they're like, oh, we need help. We need to repot these. We're having a party. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, these plants are like this. And they're just sad plants. And I looked at the potting soil. You know what they had done? And bless their hearts, I get it. They had dug soil from their yard and put it in their container.
Oh my God.
They were like little concrete blocks. We had to take it over and chip the dirt out of it. Do not use soil from your yard. Just don't do it. I get it, you know, it's there, it's free, But you will be so sorry later on. If any of you have ever dug in our soils, they're not pretty, they're not nice. There's a reason we're using containers to garden. Just don't use your own potting soil. And then some people go, well, how about if I put that on the bottom and then the good soil on top? Don't do it. Spend a little bit extra and use a good potting soil. Okay, so any questions on that so far? Pretty explanatory. Okay, so then it comes to, you've got your potting soil, you've got the good drainage, now you're ready to pot. And what I tell people is, there's really no rules on what you put together. It's what you want to put together. Whether you're using perennials, just annuals, vegetables and herbs, you know, there's no really hard rules about what you can put together. Other than what I would say is, if you're putting together, say you want to put a container of succulents together, very, very pretty, they all have kind of like use. What I wouldn't do is if I have this really pretty succulent container, which isn't going to need a lot of water, the last thing I'm going to do is throw a snapdragon in there, because this is going to need more moisture. So to keep this happy, I'm going to overwater all of this. If I want to keep this happy, I'm going to underwater this. So pick materials, plant materials that have like needs, whether it's sun, watering, shade. Pick the things that are going to be happy together. Be a happy little family together in your container. The other thing to think about is how you want your container to look proportionally. There are hard and fast rules. You know, your plants need to be 2/3 of your container, blah, 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 blah. Use your own good judgment. Put together what you like. It's your container, going in your yard, your house, your colors. Put together what you like. You know, some people think, well, okay. And that's how I kind of put this one. So this one I was thinking, okay, I've got a white snapdragon. Okay, I want to pull some other colors into the white, because white's kind of boring. Oh, cool. I'll put yellow in there. Yellow is a nice, bright, sunny color, great for fall. And I was like, okay, what do I match with that? Find something that has some yellow in it too. So I thought these snapdragons are terrific. So this snapdragon gets tall. It gets 12 to 16 inches tall. So it's going to be a nice height. These snapdragons are little dwarf guys. They're only going to get about 6 inches tall. So these guys are not going to compete with this one. I'm not going to have a big pot full of big, tall snapdragons. I'm going to have some varying heights. But I wanted my yellow in there. I'm going to use this because it's not as deep. Want me to put this down so it doesn't go? So it's not going to, I have my calendulas. Another really great cool season plant. Has anybody grown calendulas? You should do it. I, for the longest time, was not a huge calendula fan, but we brought some home because we had a bunch at the garden center. I'm like, okay, I'll take them home and plant them. These guys literally bloomed all season long, from the cool into the hot. And they took a bit of a break when it was the first part of June. They were like, not real happy. But they perked back up, and they have just bloomed their little hearts out. They have not stopped blooming. You can also use these as an edible. I didn't know that. You can use it like in your salads and stuff. It can be an edible. It's a nice little plant. If you haven't tried these, they kind of, to me, they kind of take that marigold place. You know, this nice little continual bloomer.
Is that a low?
Calendulas?
Yeah, I mean, I know calendulas get bigger, but...
This one is a taller one. It's 12 inches. What I could do is keep it pinched back. Yeah, if you just let it grow, it'll get kind of leggy, especially certain times of the year. But just pinching it back keeps it under control.
What kind of lighting does it need?
This time of year it wants full sun. When we're in the heat of the season, it's going to prefer a little bit shadier spot on it. So it's going to mix some yellow in there.
If you plant calendulas in your yard, you will never get rid of them.
Really?
Oh, they reseed and reseed and reseed and reseed.
Ah, okay. Good advice. I've only grown them in containers and never grown them in the yard. But if you have a spot, a perennial bed or something where you want continual bloomers to come back up. Might be a really good idea. So then I was mixing my colors, and I was like, okay, well this has some of the yellow, but it's also got some of the dark burgundy. And I was like, well, I'll throw a pansy in there that has that. So this pot, I was matching colors a lot, which, you know, some people love to do. They love to match colors. There's people that bring their cushions in from their patio furniture and they're matching colors. And I get that. For some people, that's really, really important to them. To me, nothing matches in my yard. I have a little bit of every color everywhere, but that's what I like. You have to do what you like in your yard. So that was kind of a combo I pulled together. I went, oh, it's kind of pretty. It's kind of fallish. I've got some height, some filler. I've got some ones to go around the edge. The other thing I could have added to this would be a spiller to go over the edge of my pot. Maybe I would throw in, you know, an ivy to kind of fill that edge and soften the edge of a pot. This is going to be perennial. The thing about, I love using ivies in my containers. I use ivy and I use vinca a lot in my containers. The trick with those guys is you have to be ruthless. If they start getting out of control, don't be afraid to rip them out of there. Trust me, if there's a little bit of a root left in there, it'll fill back in. So don't be afraid to be ruthless if you use this kind of thing in containers. A lot of people go, oh, ivy, doesn't that need shade? Yeah, it does, but I have found in my containers, if I'm planting it at the edge, a lot of times these guys are getting big enough that they shade it naturally. So I don't have to worry about it burning. It just gets a natural shade off of your plants. The other thing you can do when you're doing an edge of a pot, instead of, if I pot this just like this, is it going to show very well? It really doesn't. But if I pot it at an angle, you're going to see a lot more of the front of it. It's going to fill a lot more of your pot. So don't be afraid to pull things out. You can smush them. A lot of people are like, oh, delicate little plant, put it in. It's okay. You can be a little ruthless. You can smush it a little bit and then plant it at the edge of your pot so that it's filling more of the edge and not just a straight up where you're not really seeing a whole lot of it. I'll stick it back in there. So you can put a lot of designs together. The other thing to think about, and I guess I should have touched on this before, but I'll go back a little bit, is the material of your pot. So this one was a metal one. I love this pot, but you know, I started thinking about it in June. What do you think the temperature of this pot's going to be? Really, really hot. So either I got to put, like I said, putting a pot in here that's going to keep it a little more, it's not going to get all the heat on it, or I'm going to move it into the shade in the summertime so it's not going to get as hot. I can put succulents in here because the thing I have found with succulents is they really don't care how hot it gets. They just keep on going. So you can definitely, you do want to pay attention to the material that your pot is in. Plastic is great in that it's very lightweight, very easy to move around, but there's not a lot of insulation in this. So come winter time, roots and things in here are going to feel a lot more cold than they would if they were in a ceramic pot. The ceramic pots that we carry, okay. What's the negative? They're really heavy. What's the positive? Is they're very well insulated. They can take our cold winters and not freeze and crack. A lot of people are worried about having plants in their containers through the winter time. If you get a quality pot that is high fired, you can leave stuff in it through the winter time. I have pots that are literally at least 15, if not more, years old, and they have held up and they've kept their color and they have not cracked. But they're a good quality pot. So these are a little more insulated. In the summer, they do help keep the moisture in, so they're not drying out as quick. In the wintertime, you're getting some of that protection on your roots, so you get a little more forgiveness in the wintertime. So Ken brought these out. I thought this was really cute. For summertime, it'll be cute hanging out. I was like, oh man, a little salad bowl in there. Wouldn't that be really cute? Yes.
With the ceramic pots? Do you have to worry about them getting too hot in the summer?
I have not had problem with that. They're thick enough that they actually have that more, they do insulate against the heat too. So I found them to hold up well in both seasons. I think that's why I like the ceramics so well. They're multi-seasonal. So this has the little holes in it. Really, really cute. Is it going to be as effective in the wintertime? Probably not. But really cute for the summertime. This is some of the new stuff that we got in. I really like this. It's a really cool look. So I was like, okay, how do I plant in this? It's got holes all over it. How am I going to plant? Well, I could find a plastic pot to stick in there and give me that protection. I could line it with sphagnum moss so that I'm lining the edge of it with that moss so you're seeing that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make him do tricks. That's Vincent the Wonder Dog doing tricks. So you could line this with the sphagnum moss on the outside, but then I would also line it with plastic on the inside of that. So sphagnum on the outside, line it with the plastic, punch holes in it, and then plant into that. There again, the negative with that is that moss is, in the summertime is going to dry out pretty quickly. So you probably have to moisten it periodically. In the wintertime, I don't know. My suspicion is it wouldn't give you really that protection that you need. So definitely putting another pot inside it and planting in it would give you a really cool look. Wood is another way to go. Negatives with wood in Arizona, it dries out. Once it dries out, what happens to wood when it dries out? It shrinks, it falls apart, loses its color. Some very pretty in certain circumstances, but probably not my favorite type of container to use for long term. If you want long-term container, you can't hardly beat the ceramic pots. Really hold it well. This is another texture, so this is concrete and resin. These are kind of new pots to us, so I'm going to experiment with them to see how they hold up in the wintertime, because I'm just not sure yet. But I think they're going to do fine. And the thing I like about these, it's another thing I haven't tried, but I have a suspicion I could paint this any color I wanted, and that paint, because it's kind of a porous material, the paint would just stay on there. So I'm going to experiment with some of these at home. Ken doesn't know this yet, but I'm going to experiment.
Instead of 33 pots, it would be 34.
35. But the thing I like about this is it's fairly lightweight. I can move this easily, a lot easier than I moved this. So I'm going to try it. You know, you got to play with different things and see what you like about your containers, texture-wise. Then of course terracotta. Terracotta certainly has a place in the yard. It's terrific with little herbs and things in it. It is. I love this shape. It's a great succulent bowl. Negative of terracotta is our water is very high in minerals. So what happens? You get this little white line all around your top, which some people go, well, it looks antique. Well, that's good. If that's the look that you like, no problem with it. If that's going to drive you nuts, don't go with terracotta, because I will guarantee you, you will get a mineral deposit on the outside of it. These are not winter hardy. Well, okay, I take that back. Some of these are more winter hardy than others. So the inexpensive terracotta, trust me, is not going to survive your winter. It's going to chip, it's going to get moisture in it, and that freeze thaw just makes them fall apart. They're not going to last very long. If you dump your pots and you bring it inside in the shed or garage for the wintertime, that's fine. Go ahead and use it. But if you leave it out in the wintertime, it's not going to be a happy camper. It will fall apart on you. Okay, so since I forgot, just a little blurb back to cover your material, type of material in your pot. So then it also, so I put together this little vignette, so we could do other vignettes. One of my other favorite things to do is put edibles. I'm going to put this down. Ugh. Break my back. So, spring or fall veggies. I love fall veggies. I love the concept of being able late, November, go out and pick stuff for my salad. And we can do that here. We're very, very lucky in our climate that we can have fall veggies. And I like to mix them with my herbs. So I grabbed a rosemary and move this stuff out. Rosemary is an amazing perennial for here. Nice evergreen. It's always going to stay green. In the spring, it's going to have really pretty little purple blossoms, and a lot of times in the fall, it'll bloom again. So I love rosemary. There's many different kinds. There's more upright ones. There's ones that just stay low and spread out. This is Tuscan. Tuscan kind of does both. It goes upright, but it also spreads out and does some nice draping. I am going to have to, if I put this in the center of a pot, I'm going to have to control it. Because if I don't control it, it's going to take over the entire pot. So you do have to kind of making sure you're using it, holding it, harvesting from it. This is Swiss chard. I love Swiss chard. Don't like to eat it, but I love the look of Swiss chard. And what I like about it is these beautiful red stems. It is absolutely gorgeous. I have one in a pot right now that we grew all summer long, and it's probably this big and this wide. It is stunning. The birds have used it a lot to eat with this summer, so it's got some holes in it. But that red stem on there, you're not going to find that in a lot of other plants. And in the wintertime, fall into winter, it's a beautiful look out there in your yard to see that. And this will winter over. And yes, you can harvest from it. You can use it in your salad, your green smoothies, whatever you've got going. Swiss chard, even though I don't like the taste so much, I like the look of it, so it's a good one to put in. This is a red romaine. Isn't that pretty? There again, nice kind of fall colors. I can shove that in there. And the thing with lettuces, the more you harvest from them, the more they're going to grow. So yes, you can start harvesting from this right away, and it's going to start filling out even more nicely. The lettuces are going to continue to grow probably until they get really, really cold. So sometime in January, if it's in a more open spot, it's probably going to bite the dust. If it's up to the house or a little courtyard where it's a little more protected, you could probably harvest from it year round. You'll always get some lettuce off of there. Spinach. Now I do like spinach. So you can throw spinach in there as well. It's not going to get as tall, it's going to stay a little lower, so I could use that on the edge of my pot to kind of fill in. And then of course, some little Johnny jump ups. These are another one that's edible. Kind of really cool in the dead of winter if you're putting together a salad. Doesn't that look kind of neat to have some color on your salad, or even as a little garnish on the side? So these are wonderful little plants to put in there, to kind of fill in with. The other thing I would say is when you're making a pot, don't be afraid to fill your pot full. A mistake that I see a lot of people make is they go, oh, okay, I got a pot this big, and I'm going to put this in there and that, and it's all going to fill in. Kind of boring, right? So you need to make sure you're fill those pots full to begin with. The roots of plants do not mind being shoved in and put in together. So don't be afraid. Shove a lot of stuff in your pot. The plants will like it, and it'll look much more attractive in there. Plus, what I have found is you'll lose something. I know that's a bad thing to say, but trust me, I've put together hundreds of pots, and eventually one thing's just going to go, oh, I'm not happy, I'm dying. Well, then you still have a full pot. If you only have a couple of things in there and one thing dies, you've lost your effect. If you've got a lot of other things in there and one thing dies, you're not going to really notice it as much. So don't be afraid to shove those pots full of things. Of course, like I said, the rosemary is going to be there permanently. It's a perennial, it's always going to stay. These guys, come into May, June, they're going to kind of be done. So you're pulling them out and you're putting in your geraniums, or you're putting in some petunias. So this is kind of like the mainstay of your pot. You're going to have to keep it trimmed, but you're only replacing around it. You're not going to have to replace the entire thing all the time. That's why I really like using perennials in the center of my pots. I like to use little pine trees. This is great going in from fall into Christmas because you can enjoy it for the fall. And then when Christmas rolls around, you can put some little lights on there and it'll be really cute and adorable. And then people go, well, is it going to get too big? Colorado spruce, they want to be 30 feet or more. Am I going to keep it in that pot forever? No. I'm going to enjoy it for a year, maybe 2 years, and then I'm going to pull it out. And I'm either going to put it in my yard, I can put it in a bigger pot, I can give it to a friend. There's many things I can do, but I have gotten my money's worth out of it for 2 to 3 years. Instead of changing the entire pot out, I'm just changing what I'm putting around that pot. I can change it seasonally. This is, help me, the word is escaping. Thank you. Could not think of that word. So I started using cyclamens a couple of years ago in my containers because I didn't really, kind of like the calendulas. I really didn't know a lot about them, so I wanted to try using them. Anybody grow these in containers?
Yes, they're fabulous.
Yeah, I do.
Aren't they amazing? I love these things. They take the cold. I mean, sometimes they get a little, come January, they don't look the best sometimes, but by February, they're back out of it and blooming again. Kind of continual little bloomers. Little buds come out of the center of the plant. You see it kind of in there. And just really, really cool plant. I really like these. I was afraid to use them for the longest time because I didn't know about them. But once I started using them, I fell in love with them. And I think that's the other issue is don't be afraid to use certain plants. You may kill it. That's okay. We have more plants. But at least you tried it. And you may come across a plant that you just love and performs really, really well in your yard. So don't be afraid to try different plants. This is another one that I've kind of fallen in love with, the heuchera. I love the color of this plant, especially going into fall and winter time. This plant is going to stay pretty much evergreen and keep this color all through the winter and the spring. In the summertime, I kind of move it into the shadier parts of my pots are, and it just is happy. I've also, so this is one that I always thought needed shade. So Ken and I put it in a pot a couple winters ago. It's out on our back patio, which is full hot sun on a brick patio. I thought, oh, come summer, that thing's just gonna croak, we'll have to replace it. It's prettier than ever. It made it through a really hot June, and it's simply gorgeous. Now, it's one of those ones that's taken over the pot. So what am I gonna have to do? I'm gonna divide it and pull it out. Leave some in there, I'm going to move some to my other pots because it has gotten out of control. But this one is so pretty for the fall.
What's it called?
This one is the heuchera autumn leaves. Autumn leaves heuchera. There's a couple different, there's another one out there called peach melba that has more orange leaves to it. But just so pretty in a pot, putting it with some little Johnny jump ups. The other thing I like to use a lot is these are the ornamental kales. And people always ask me, can I eat this? Yes, you could eat it. It's a little more bitter than your regular kales, but you could eat it if you wanted to, but it's more decorative. And as it gets bigger, I don't know if you can see it from here, but it has these really pretty purple centers in it. It's going to be really gorgeous when it gets a little more size to it because you get to see more of that purple vein coming out of it. So pretty to mix with a dark purple pansy because you're kind of pulling the colors together in there. Word of caution with these guys, if you have javelina, don't even try.
They love it.
They absolutely love kale. If you have it in your yard, trust me, they're going to come find it. And pansies too. So if you have that, don't put it in a pot. You don't want to be drawing those guys in. Use it in the backyard, or maybe you have a container up on a deck that they can't get to. So yeah, you want to be smart about where you use these guys because the javelinas do absolutely love them. We finally put up an electric fence because every fall I put my pansies in and my kale, and it was gorgeous, and I was like, ah. And the next morning I would walk out and there'd be like a bomb went off in my yard, because javelinas are not nice. They don't just gently take some leaves. They like rip it out, and they stomp on it, and they throw dirt everywhere, and then they laugh as they leave. So we put up a little electric fence that works perfectly. I mean, it has kept them out for over a year, 2 years now.
Longer than that. I tried to talk her into a compound bow and some barbecue sauce. Shouldn't we do that? So I had to go electric fence.
Yeah.
It works out really well.
But it has worked amazingly well. And it's just a little wire, so you hardly even see it. The dogs know it's there. They've learned it's there. But it is on a timer too, so it shuts off during the day when we're out there, but comes on when the javelina. So if you have javelina issues, be smart about what you put in your pot. I have found they leave the heucheras alone. I have never had them touch my heucheras. Typically they leave snapdragons alone. They will leave these alone. I don't know why. You'd think they look yummy and edible. But usually the bunnies and the javelina leave these guys alone. Of course, they would love your little herb garden there with the lettuce and all that kind of stuff. So be wise about what you're putting where.
You know, we had that huge lavender out in that red pot. They left that alone for years. Rosemary.
Yeah. Rosemary.
I do like
and
lettuce and
lavender.
broccoli, kale.
The other one they leave alone is the Dusty Miller, which is another terrific plant. You want to talk about a plant that goes through seasons? It's fine in the cold. It does okay in the heat. So it's another really terrific plant to mix into those winter pots. Gives you a different color and texture. A lot of people go, ooh, gray. Ooh, gray. But it really shows off other things really well. And you can mix it, and it really makes other colors pop. Plus it gives you a different texture in there. Very bunny and javelina resistant. Grasses. Grasses are another one that I really like to use in containers, especially going into fall. I have a really beautiful sedge, kind of a brown sedge that I have in a container, which is now taking over the container, so I've got to redo the container, but that's okay, because I got like 3 years out of it. So throwing a grass in there for the fall is very, very pretty. The other thing you can do is things like boxwoods. So boxwoods are a nice evergreen. If you like to spend time out in your yard and you're very creative, these guys like to be shaped. You can make spirals, you can make Christmas trees, you can make little squares, you can make whatever you want. But the great thing about these is they can be shaped. So very, very pretty to put in the center. Always going to be there. It's going to get a little taller. It's going to fill out. You can shape it, keep it trimmed. Very attractive. Time is it?
10:12.
Okay. You can see my other little vignette over here. I won't drag everything up. But mums, of course, scream fall. So for decorating for fall, we could put these in a container to have fall color. Now, the thing people go, well, is it going to continue to bloom? No, it's not. But you could probably get at least 2 months out of this. And sometimes what I'll do, instead of actually planting this in the container, I'll leave it in its pot. I'll dig the hole out for it. I'll leave it in its pot. I'll stick it in there and I'll enjoy it for fall. And I'm enjoying that scream of fall. Woo, look at me, it's fall. And then after Thanksgiving, I can pull it out because it's not going to look very pretty come Thanksgiving. And then I can stick something else in there. Maybe a little cyclamen, something else to give it some color. So don't be afraid, these are great perennials. You could take it out of your pot, move it into your perennial bed or out in your yard. It will winter over. It'll come back next year and it'll be absolutely gorgeous. So don't be afraid to use it now and then put it out in the yard for color later on next year. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a certain time you need to put those in the ground so they'll come back?
With mums, they're really, really hardy. I wouldn't be afraid to plant this even into December.
Just cut it back to about
Yeah.
3 or 4 inches.
Right, you're cutting it
Okay.
back.
And is there a way of pinching them off so they continue?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so then usually most of your mums are going to put on 2 blooms. So you can see these heads right here are going to bloom out. So they're going to bloom for 3, they're going to look good for 3 to 4 weeks. And then inside, you can't probably really see it very well, but there's little tiny blossoms. So after these are gone, these little tiny blossoms are going to grow up and develop and get big. So you pinch the old blossoms off, you get your new blossoms coming out. That's why I said you probably get 2 months out of this. But come, Christmas, it's not going to look that pretty. So you pull it out. So even if we pulled it out and we had this big hole in there, we're like, well, I really don't want to plant anything. I'm a huge fan of putting stuff in my containers. If you look at my containers at home, I have frogs, I have all kinds of weird little things. Things that aren't going to matter outside if they get winter weather. So if you've got a little hole, then you just want to put a little something in there. Looks cute. Don't want him to fall. The other one, I thought this was really cool. So these are some new things that we got in. I was like, okay, they look cool, how do I use them? Well, you could easily use this in your pot. Kind of have something tall behind it to the side. Maybe having some ornamental kales in the front. A little bit of ivy down in there. Of course, once I got everything potted, sit up a little higher. But a nice real interest to add to your container, that's going to be, you could leave it there year round. And it would add some interest to your container. Sometimes I think, think outside the box. It's okay to think outside the box and put different things. I have, in one of my containers, we have these, they're supposed to be pot risers, to help keep your pot off the ground, and they're feet. I have them sitting in one of my pots. So I have like these little feet sitting in this pot with some plants around it. It's amazing how many people notice it. They're like, oh, you got feet in your pot. I'm like, yeah, it's like, cool. I'm like, oh, okay. But you can use different things in your containers to make them interesting. I also have I didn't cover succulents very much, and I should have. Succulents are another great, easy care. If you're traveling a lot, if you're out of town, you just don't want to fuss with them a lot, go with succulents. They are amazingly hardy, don't take much water, they do fine in the wintertime. Pick winter succulents. Not every succulent is winter hardy, so be careful what you're mixing. A lot of them are evergreen, so you're going to have that color. So I just grabbed a few things. But this would go right through the winter time for you. It has a really nice southwestern flair to it. Takes very little maintenance. I heard my succulent pots I hardly ever touch. I could go every once in a while, oh, I guess I should water that. Yep.
What kind of soil do succulents need? Is it the same mix or do you need something different?
If it's a bigger pot, I would just go with the water's potting soil because it does drain well. It's not going to rot those roots out. If it's a little bit smaller pot, I do have some bags down there of cactus and succulent mix, which has a little more sand to it. That would be excellent as well. But they can survive in just regular potting soil as long as it's draining well and you're not keeping them too wet. Big fan of succulents, especially if you're time conscious. You can't hardly beat the succulents. Watering in the wintertime. So our water needs in the wintertime are going to be different than water needs in the summertime. Most of the time out there in the summer, you're watering once a day sometimes to keep things happy. In the wintertime, not so much. You do need to water through the winter, whether it's a container, whether it's even your plants out in the yard. That winter watering is essential. If you know, usually most of my pots I water once a week in the wintertime. If I know, if I'm listening to the radio and they go, oh my gosh, the freeze of all freezes is coming, be careful. Water your plants before you go into that freeze, and they're going to be able to take that freeze a lot easier. So the water acts like an antifreeze in there. A dry plant in a dry pot going through a freeze is going to suffer. So you know the cold is coming. Give them a good drink of water before that cold. But on average, I water mine once a week. My succulents, maybe every 2 weeks. They still need moisture. That root ball is still active, it's still growing, so you do need to get moisture to things in the wintertime as well. You can, if things are looking beautiful, pansies will go through the winter. They'll take a hit if we get that really hard frost. It will kill the blooms and knock the blooms off. So you could cover, if you know that really hard freeze is coming, but you have company coming the next day, cover your pot. Do not use plastic. You can use a little towel, you can use sheets, blankets, that type of thing, but don't use plastic to cover your pot. It intensifies the freeze. So you have to be careful with that. Is there anything I didn't cover? Any questions?
So the pansies make it through the winter?
They will.
How about through the June heat?
So, pansies are a cool season plant. So they'll go from now until usually into May. That being said, again, it's kind of like the ivy. If they're in a spot where they're shaded, they'll go through the summertime. I have a huge pot that has a grass in it that has had a pansy in it all summer long, that has bloomed all summer long. But the difference being that big grass is shading the pansy. So, and if it was if I took the pot of pansies and moved it into a shady spot, it would go through the summer for you. So very versatile plant. Those and the Johnny Jump Ups, don't be afraid to use them. Don't just think, oh, you can only get one season out of them, because you might be surprised how much you get out of them. Any other questions? Yes?
Aqua boost
Stay in the soil.
pot.
Probably about a season.
And then
1 year.
change it again.
Right.
Can you add it just on top?
It's not going to be as effective on top. It really does need to be worked into the soil. So she was asking about the aqua boost, which is a little crystal. Probably once a year you need to refurbish them, and not as effective leaving them on top. You want to work them into the soil so they're down by the roots of the plant. Yes.
You mentioned you weren't a fan of stones at the bottom of the container. What about on the top for decoration?
You could do it on top for decoration, definitely. There again, the only caution I have on that is it is going to heat up. So in the summertime, those stones are going to get hot, which maybe if you're using it with your succulents and stuff, no big deal. They're not going to care. If you're using it with a plant that maybe dries out quickly or can't take the heat, you just have to watch it a little bit. But yeah, no problem putting them off.
Same thing with mulch?
Yes.
Like a decorative mulch? Okay.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. You can use the mulch, the rocks, that type of thing.
I'm trying to put together, I've got one of those moss baskets like we did, and I made that one up last winter and had it in the house. I'm thinking I want to put it undercover in the patio, but I'm not sure what to put in it.
Whatever you want to put in it. You could easily put your pansies in it, the ornamental kales, dianthus. There's a lot of things you could put
What
in
about
it.
the major plant in the middle?
There again, depending upon, think about the size you want it to be, and you could use grasses, you could use little boxwoods, something taller like the snapdragons.
There was something down there called salvia, and it was something fuchsia. It was
So-
really pinky and...
Very pretty
tiny.
right now, but
Yeah.
it's going to go dormant in the wintertime.
Oh, it is?
So,
Okay.
yeah, she was asking about the salvia, which is gorgeous right now, and it's going to be gorgeous until we get a hard frost, and then it'll lose its leaves and it'll just be sticks in a bucket. So that's why you want to stay with something that's more evergreen as your center.
Those are all going to be in pots in the basket, and I could just change that
Sure.
out
You bet.
and put something like a poinsettia or something.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Although poinsettias don't like the cold yet. They would be like this.
Yeah, but I could use rosemary.
Oh, yeah, rosemary is great.
Yeah.
You got a question?
I did. We came up from Phoenix, and I'm just wondering, is the planting season, could we use these same plants down there, even though it's a little warmer right now, knowing
You
it's going
could.
in the fall?
Yeah, definitely. The pansies and that type of thing. Where the problem you would have is once it starts getting really hot, like April. So the pansies there's not a chance in the world the pansy's going to go through summer in Phoenix.
Okay.
Be gorgeous right now, and it'll be beautiful. Yours would actually look nicer through the winter than ours will. So yes, you can definitely do it, but come that heat, it's just gonna look I'm done. And that's where you put all your geraniums and all that kind of stuff. Any other questions? I'll be up here later if you guys want to talk to me. Appreciate you being here today. Don't be afraid to rip the containers apart and do them again for winter, okay? All right, thank you.